Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. Today's guest has quickly turned into a good friend. He's a brilliant individual, a seasoned brand consultant. He's worked with Fortune 500 companies, all the way down to specializing ultimately in those 7, 8 figure brands that want to take their companies over to that next level. Some of you have seen him on stage. He's a frequent keynote speaker. Many of you might have actually read his book, and we'll get into that in just a minute. I can go on and on and on. He's, again, worked with any number of companies, fastest growing companies. He's helped to establish multi-million dollar brands. As I go through his testimonials, they read as, the investment paid off tenfold. I've been able to raise my prices 50% without raising a blink, 27 proposals and 17 booked in 5 months, and yada, yada, yada. So I'm very excited to have him on. Perez, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks, Charles, so much for having me here. Good to be here, man.
When people think about branding, oftentimes they think it's just a matter of having a creative logo and
Yeah.
maybe a color palette. And branding, I think, for a lot of people is often seen as something that's nice to have. But there's less of an emphasis on the importance of branding, especially when it comes to attracting quality clients and so forth. So can you talk to us a little bit more about what is a brand?
Yeah. So I love that you start here because I really appreciate when I do start here and just defining our terms. Because when I came into the scene after leaving the Fortune 500 world and started working with entrepreneurs and 7 and 8 figure businesses, they relate to branding as what you just said, logo or your website, or even they'll make it synonymous with marketing. And I always like to start with the definition that I've used. I like defining our terms. So the definition that I've used in my career is a desired perception. So if brand is a desired perception, branding is a process for creating, shaping, and influencing that desired perception that you want. Is it the right perception? That's the question you ask. Are you giving off the right perception in order to attract that higher end client? Do you look
Mm-hmm.
down market, but you're selling up market? Are you positioning yourself to a lower end buyer or a more sophisticated buyer? So all these sort of things trickle down from creating the desired perception that you want, and then reverse engineering how you need to speak, how you need to look, and also how you need to behave.
Let's talk about your book for a minute. So, your book is titled Your Brand Should Be Gay, right? Did I get the title right?
It's half of it. Yes, your brand should be gay, and in parentheses, even if you're not. And if you think about it, if you're listening in, maybe you are wondering, why should my brand be gay? Or maybe you had a little chuckle, maybe you had a little laugh because it kind of like you get it. You get what I'm trying to do here. Or maybe you're offended, and maybe you're intrigued. All of those emotions is really what I'm kind of teaching on a meta level, the power of branding, particularly if you're trying to be disruptive, if you're trying to stand out in a crowded marketplace, or if you're really trying to infuse personality to really pierce through the clutter that we are all bombarded with when it comes to marketing messages and branding and so forth. And so it's not about being gay. It doesn't matter what your sexual preference is or orientation is. I'm really just doing it in a way to teach about the power of branding. It should pique your curiosity. It should attract or repel people. And also it should just be authentic. And that's really at the core what the book is teaching about. It's having a brand that's authentic. But if I had a book called Your Brand Should Be Authentic, I would venture to say, I don't know how many people are going to wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, I should get that book, because they're not necessarily thinking about being authentic. I think authenticity is certainly important, but I need to get your attention first. And that's
Yeah.
what the book accomplishes.
I don't know what came first, if it was the book that put you on the map as a popular speaker and, well-known brand strategist, or if you were first more well-known and then the book just amplified everything that you were at. Which one of those came first?
The book definitely came later. So I'll cut to the chase there. The book
Yeah.
came later. I think it was an amalgamation of years of being on the speaker circuit and teaching and inspiring people. It was my agency is called Branding for the People. And so when you have this mission to help more people and to create brands that are helping people, you get people's attention, but not everyone is ready to work with you. And so people are saying, you need to write a book. You need to write a book so that you can teach what you're teaching so they can get value. And they also get a sense of how you think, right? And that's how I deliberately wrote the book, is kind of inside the thinking of being a brand thinker, such that whether you do it yourself, whether you hire someone else, or whether you hire my agency, whatever the pathway is for you, depending on what stage you are in your business, that you can apply these principles and it can make a profound impact on your business trajectory.
Now, I know you're real big on authenticity, and you and I have spoken quite a bit offline about making sure a brand is authentic. What does that mean?
First, it means something really personal to me. I think if people listening in, it just so happens to be that I identify as a gay man. And it wasn't always easy to be different. It wasn't as cool as perhaps it might be more so now. Maybe in some places, not as much. Throughout my entire life, I think just being different in many different identifiers, it's like I had to really be comfortable with being different, but also what's true to me. At the same time, you want to sort of fit in, or you sort of want to assimilate, or whatever the proper term is for you. But for me, it was just, how do I find what's authentic to me and own that? That is important. And I think that becomes my beacon and guiding light on, is this true for me? And it's okay, because there are other people that I might be inspired by, look up to, but they're on their own journey. They're on their own path.
Mm-hmm.
And that may not be what's true or authentic for me. So on the business side of things, I do believe if I really, because I've always been fascinated and studied like psychology and linguistics and the whole cognitive neuroscience and stuff like that. And so when you really think about it, at the end of the day, we buy from companies that we trust, like, and respect. And I would also add that we buy from companies and brands that are authentic and that are genuine and that are real. On a professional sense, if you're a business owner and you're building a brand and you're really focusing on that brand being authentic, I assert that you'll yield a lot more dividends there, rather than just always going for just the sale, because anyone can acquire a customer. But if it's not authentic, or if you're not authentically marketing something and then delivering that, you'll lose a customer for life and you'll decrease your customer lifetime value.
Our listeners right now, there's a good chance that they're sitting here going, wait a minute. How do we make a logo in colors authentic? Because that's what I figure brand is. However, what we're discussing here is brand that goes beyond just a logo in a few different colors and typography and so forth. So let's go into that. When you refer to a brand, what is that recipe? What are all the components that go into building in an authentic brand?
It really starts with, and this is probably similar from a marketing perspective, it starts with the who, what, and why, right? Who's the target audience? What are the problems that you're solving for them? And then why? Why should they listen to you? Why should they care? Why are you different? Or how are you different? And then level two. So once you get clear on the who, what, and why, the level two is like, all right, how do I position myself uniquely in or different in the category? So I like to use Venn diagrams a lot. So if you can imagine in a Venn diagram, there's three angles that I look at. The first one is, what's something that you can credibly own? So if you're building a brand, it's got to be credible to who you are, your vision, your purpose, your mission, your values. And then the second piece is, all right, this is where you look at the competitive landscape. How are you unique in that competitive landscape? That's the second part of the Venn diagram. And then the third part is, here's where you do a deeper dive with your target audiences. What is relevant to them? What's going to resonate to them? And it's the intersection of all three of those domains: credibility, uniqueness, and relevancy is where you want to best position your brand, and more specifically, your message, your value proposition. And then you can go down into the look and feel and the voice of your copy and all those sort of fun stuff that creatively build an identity for your brand. The last phase is amplify. So now that you have this beautiful foundation and clarity of knowing who authentically your brand is or not, whether you're a company brand or a personal brand, then you want to amplify that. And this is where we need marketing. So you need to amplify that from a visual perspective, from a verbal perspective, but also from an experiential perspective. You have to deliver a brand experience that really embodies everything that you've all those two other phases that I just prescribed.
I know that you specialize in working with 7 and 8 figure companies. And with those 7 and 8 figure companies, your process helps them, as your testimonials have alluded to, bring in more deals and so forth. To start with, what is a brand? The way that I think is I like to look at a company and go, okay, this one is doing well. And it allows me at this point go, okay, the different components are doing well, and then contrast. And this is a brand that is inauthentic. Are there any brands that might be doing it well or not well?
One of the things that I like to do, if you're cool with this, is I like to use examples of 7 and 8 figure businesses. The problems of those types of businesses, particularly service-based businesses, is very different than the Tiffany's and the Walmarts and the Apples of the world. When I've adapted that level of thinking to help this market, here's an example of inauthenticity, right? So I had a client here in Texas. I'm based in Austin now, but there's this client and his company was called Extreme Lawn Care with an X, right? Extreme Lawn Care. And he's had a successful multiple 7-figure business for that industry. That's quite good. And the problem that he was faced, what was inauthentic, I was like, well, is all you do is lawn care? He's like, no, we do so much more. We do landscaping, we do pest control, and then he listed a whole set of other things. And so I said, well, your name is inauthentic to even just what you offer. And then from a personality perspective, the whole extreme energy, that was a very personality, didn't really fit. If you met the CEO, he's just such a purpose-driven, warm, caring people person type of CEO. So I said, that's so inauthentic. And so we rebranded him to Purple Care, which, okay, this is another level of like using color as a strategy, right? But in a sea of brands where everything is green in their branding, he deliberately went to market with purple. I said, let's leverage that, because he was known as the purple people. Let's leverage that and let's call you Purple Care rather than Extreme Lawn Care. And what that did, it helped him to invite the very conversation that I was talking to you about with my book. People are like, what's Purple Care? Because he was losing customers to his competitors. He's like, what's Purple Care? And he's like, that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to have that conversation. And he went from 100 customers to 2,000 customers after rebranding.
Wow. So that was a naming issue.
We gave him a more sophisticated purple. And then we also added, I like to show visuals sometimes, but I know we're doing this interview, but we added this gorilla as part of his icon or as part of his logo. And we built this whole story around the puck, the gorilla, and how he's like the protector of your lawns and the green. And we built this whole personality that is so unprecedented for that industry. And it was a game changer. So yeah, it was more the naming, it was the logo, it was the strategy, positioning, and then all the tactical stuff, all the trucks and billboards, all that stuff was just plastered all over. And then he literally cemented his position in the marketplace as that. And so I say that, and while it's fun to come up with like cool logos and stuff like that, it's the thinking behind getting that versus just, hey, I think you should be called this for what, for no strategic reason.
What is the symptom? If somebody's sitting here going, you're a smart dude and this makes sense and I can see how that worked for Extreme, how do I know when it's right for me to reevaluate my brand and maybe do a complete brand overhaul?
I'll speak into the market that I serve, which are 7 and 8-figure businesses. So typically, in my experience, they've mastered some degree of marketing, sales, some operations, although maybe not all of them. And hence, they'll need a Charles to come in and help them. But to some degree, they've kind of figured out a few things. They have some traction in the marketplace. But what are some of the indicators that they come to me are on, we've grown so fast that now our messaging is all over the place. And now it's becoming confusing. Our target clients are evolving. And who we used to attract, we kind of really don't want to attract them anymore. So we want more of these ideal clients. And then also they're like, well, sometimes they're finding that they need to compete on price, not all the time. Right. But if you're high ticket, you want to present yourself as high ticket. I had another client that was doing really well, and he basically helps PhDs go from academia to industry. And he mastered all of the marketing, all the digital marketing teachings and funnels and everything. And for that industry, the reason why I'm picking on this particular company is that was really off-putting for his market, the PhD academia world. He was perceived as sort of sleazy or slimy, or just they didn't have that sense of trust. And when we rebranded his positioning, his messaging, and of course the visuals, we elevated his brand to this premium brand that then was spoke to his industry.
Right. But in today's discerning market environment, people are going right to the website and they're making a similar decision. They're saying, oh, these people look like experts. And right before we did our rebranding here at Predictable Profits, one of the symptoms that we experienced were that people were coming to us, but then they were surprised when they heard our rate. You know, that right there seems that we were attracting the wrong client. Or people, smaller companies were coming to us than the ones that we ideally seem to attract. And we didn't realize how much easier it was to attract leads until after we did the branding. Like it was, you know, we did our work and we were bringing in deals, but it was only after we did our rebranding that we're going, gosh, I mean, how much more opportunity did we lose by not doing the rebranding? And then once we did our rebranding, the funny thing is prior, we tended to attract a lot of, you know, startups through 6 figures, very early 7 figures. Then after the rebrand, 7, 8, and we've got several multinational 9-figure operations that have been looking to work with some, you know, top consultants that will reach out to us, which is, you know, amazing. But the difference from what we found is largely attributed to brand. People want to associate themselves with a brand that they can be proud of saying, I work with.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, as you and I spoke about, I attended this other event. There was a bunch of people who were wearing some Predictable Profits garb. And the interesting thing was that as they're wearing their shirts and whatnot, they're bragging about working with us. And I'm listening and I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, well, this is weird. Like they're bragging about working with us. Like, this is weird. Why is that going on? And I realized that's going on because working with us, the way our brand is laid out, signified that they're successful, therefore they get to work with us. You don't hear that a lot with business coaches. You know, a lot of times people work with a business coach because they go, oh, I've gotten to this point where I have to admit failure. Now I need help.
Yeah, you bring up a really interesting perspective because it was a couple of things that come up for me. Is one, I just want to connect something you said earlier, which is it's not what you're able to get through marketing. It's what you're not able to get when you don't dial in the branding towards your marketing. And then the second thing I wanted to respond to is that what you just illustrated is essentially sort of further along the spectrum of brand building. You know, on the one side of the spectrum is awareness, right? People just need to know who you are. And then all on the other side is like raving fans and brand advocacy and brand loyalty. And so what you've just demonstrated is that people are going to connect with your brand at the level of ethos and values and maybe even prestige, that they value the association to your brand because of what you stand for and who you are and what your company is about. And I believe that's what every company should, particularly a service provider company who wants to be like the go-to service provider. I think that's really what they should be aiming for, is what that energy that you've created.
If our listeners are saying, okay, I get it, I don't know if my brand is authentic or not, can they reach out to you, and would you be willing, or somebody in your team be willing to have a discussion with them and say, here's the opportunities that I see right now in your existing brand?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, particularly for, you know, your community, Charles, and your listeners, I mean, we usually like to start off with like a free brand strategy. We have a series of 10 questions, and it helps us to help pinpoint what you focus on first in your branding. Whether you work with my agency or not, it really is a good starting point. I'm happy to chat and see, particularly if someone's new to branding, right? If they're new to branding and this conversation is just so different from what you typically have consumed in and around all things marketing, which we need, then having a chat, I'd be happy to do that for your people for sure.
Awesome. And to get the
Yeah.
brand strategy, where do we take them?
Everything's just on brandingforthepeople.com. It's right there in the front and center. It does take you to another link, but it's just easier to remember branding for FOR, not the number four, thepeople.com.
Awesome. Now, my favorite question to ask our guests is, this is the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. If you have one big tip, your best tip for helping our listeners take their business beyond seven figures, what's that tip?
Hire a business coach.
Hey, I love that tip.
It is. I just want to expand a little bit on that. And I know it's probably like a rapid fire answer, but it is really getting the support you need to take you to whatever level you're getting. So you always want to hire someone who has a level of expertise that, the same way I advocate, you can't brand yourself. It's like you can't coach yourself. So I've hired you, I've hired coaches, I've been in masterminds. I've always gotten an ROI every single time I've invested in hiring people to help you grow your business.
I look at that as a sign of success, because if you look at, teenagers, and I've got two teenagers in my house right now. Teenagers tend to think they know everything. And I live in a golfing community, and I said to my son, hey, why don't we get golf lessons? I don't need golf lessons. I'm fine. I don't need golf lessons. But it's once you get to a certain degree of success, what I find is that the more you know, the more you realize you don't know.
You don't, yeah.
And you become avid, obsessive learners because you realize how much more opportunity and insights and whatnot are out there. And just to expand a little bit on what you said, is the same thing actually applies when we're hiring people. I had a conversation yesterday with a member of my team, and we're looking to bring on more people on the team. And she said, what is the number one piece of criteria that you're looking for? Because we're bringing in more consultants to work within our company, to work with our clients, more coaches and consultants. She said, what's the number one criteria that you're looking for? And I said, I want them to intimidate me a little bit.
Ooh.
She says, what does that mean? And I said, because I don't pretend that I know everything. And I want somebody to sit down, have a discussion with me, and teach me something that I don't know. And if we can surround ourselves with people that are more brilliant than ourselves, can you imagine the power of the organization that we're going to have?
That's right.
And for many CEOs and leaders out there, it concerns them when somebody comes to the table and shows an element of being smarter.
Yeah.
And that can oftentimes stall growth. So whether you hire, a mentor or a business coach, or you surround yourself, or it doesn't even have to be, or it can be, and,
right.
all this stuff, that is that's definitely an important element. So Rhea, I know we're pushing up against the clock. I do encourage everybody to go to Branding for the People, grab your free strategy, because it's going to be really important to know what you don't know. So grab that free strategy, just get a sense for what opportunities you have available to you right now. I think you're going to find that well worth it for your time. I also would recommend grabbing a copy of Rhea's book, Your Brand Should Be Gay, Even If You're Not. You can get that on Amazon and a bunch of the other places there. Great book.
Thank you.
Great conversation. Rhea, thank you very much.
Always a pleasure to be in your company. I always learn something new. I just want to commend you. Great energy, great human being you are, and I look forward to many more conversations like this in the years to come.
All right, that wraps up today's episode of the Beyond Seven Figures podcast. For more tips, strategies, and information for taking your company beyond seven figures, also check us out at predictableprofits.com. Again, that's predictableprofits.com. This is Charles Gaudette with my friend Perez, and I will see you in another episode.